Welcome everyone to today's tutorial. I am Melissa. I am the owner of Earth Connections. So welcome. I'd like to begin a series where I'll be posting maybe every week, every couple of weeks. We'll see how it goes, on breaking down postures and refining them for you so that you have a chance to really grow your own practice at home. Sometimes when we go to a class, we move through postures so quickly that we don't get a chance to really understand the building blocks of how we're putting that posture together. And those building blocks help other postures so that we can build off of them. So that's what I'd like to do in this series. So for our first series, I'm giggling because this can be quite dramatic, but for our first posture of this series is going to be crow pose. Now, I know a lot of people are like, what is she thinking? Crow pose is super hard, and why is she putting it in the very first episode of this series? And I'm doing it for a couple of reasons. First off, I think crow pose is a lot more accessible to people than what people believe. A lot of people see these yoga postures and they just like automatically assume like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do this. I've been training somebody and he's had 4 classes, and in 4 classes he's gone from never doing yoga in his life to being able to get up into crow pose. So that shows you that it is accessible for people. And of course it takes strength, and of course it takes patience, and it takes balance and that mind-body connection. But I do believe when we break it down and we start to put the pieces together that it actually becomes very accessible to a lot of people. And I think that when we do get into these postures, it's so liberating to be able to succeed and be like, oh my gosh, like in my brain, I thought this was gonna be so hard, and look, I'm doing it. And it can really excel your practice and really make you feel like you're achieving something and moving your practice forward. So that was one reason why. The other reason is I'm kind of an all or nothing kind of girl. So when I come up with an idea, I'm kind of like full force, let's do it, let's have some fun with it and see what happens. So that's kind of where I'm coming at. It's a little bit of my personality, but also because it should be fun. Yoga is and can be a very spiritual experience. It can be a very meditative practice, a very mind-body connection, a mindful practice. And it is all those things, but it also should be fun. Fun is a part of the process. So our imbalances, you really have to have that mindset and not get too hard on yourself and just laugh, like laugh if you fall, because that's part of the fun is learning how to kind of work through these awkward things in life and have a sense of humor about it. So I have fallen more times than I could possibly even comprehend. And each time gives my body an opportunity to remember what worked, what didn't work, so that the next time I come at the posture, I know a little bit more about myself, a little bit more what works for me. And what works for me isn't always going to be what works for the next person next to me. So comparing ourselves is very unproductive. So really just embracing your practice for where it is. And what I like to do is really offer my students, like, have some love and compassion for where you're at on your journey, because it is going to be different than the person next to you. We all have anatomical differences, we all have injuries, we all have different lifestyles. So we're all going to have different things in each practice that are easy or harder. So just be aware of that, find some compassion for yourself, enjoy the process, fall, laugh, it's okay, it's going to be fine. So let's get right into it. So the first thing about crow pose that you need to be able to do before we look into any arm balances is to be able to get into chaturanga arms with on your toes. So chaturanga dandasana is high push-ups. So we're coming up on our toes and we're dropping our shoulders away from our ears. Our core is engaged and our back is engaged. So we're nice and strong here. So this is plank pose. Now when we come on down to Chaturanga Dandasana, we're bending at the elbows alongside the body and we're coming halfway down. So it's a tricep push-up. So if you can hold this for a couple of seconds, then you should be able to start to work towards crow pose. So one of the big things we need to be able to have is those chaturanga arms to be able to sit our knees on. So we want to have those nice chaturanga arms. It's kind of hard to see with my black shirt here, but nice strong chaturanga arms. So that is the first thing. So if you can do that and you feel pretty confident and comfortable in that, then we can move to the second prep. So of course with every yoga posture, we always want to warm up our body. So definitely before trying crow pose, warm up your body, work into what I like to do, a lot of hip openers. So a lot of externally rotating postures to really open up the hips so that we can start to create that space to come bring our shoulders inward. So definitely have a practice beforehand, make sure your body's nice and warm. And then we can work our way into yogi squats. So that's kind of the second part of working our way into crow pose. So a yogi squat is exactly what you might think is a squat. So for a lot of people, and it can be an anatomical thing, that your heels don't come to the ground, and if that's the case, you can put a block underneath on both sides. And if you feel like your knees are it just hurts too much, then you can come up onto a block, and this would be your yogi squat. So all of our yogi squats are going to look slightly different depending on our body and what we have as far as injuries go or limitations of just even our anatomical structure. So if your yogi squat's like mine, you're on your heels and your sit bones are dropped pretty low. So wherever you're at, you begin to press your hands together at heart center, and we're going to push the backs of our arms into our legs and our legs into our arms. So we're sitting up nice and tall. So here we're really broadening through the collarbone, the chest, and we're sitting up. So I really want you to take awareness to the co-contraction that's happening with your legs and your thighs. So your thighs into your arms and your arms into your thighs here. So when you make that connection, just hold on to that feeling, maybe close your eyes and just connect with it. Because that feeling we're going to bring up into crow pose. That's what's going to help us to pull everything into the midline as we come up into crow. So sitting up nice and tall, and you can sit here for as long as it feels comfortable for you. You want to begin to bring your shoulders farther down, at the same time still sitting up nice and straight. So when you feel like you've done this for long enough, you feel comfortable here, you can begin to work into crow pose. So I'm going to move to the side here. So first things first is we're going to create a connection on our hands. So we want to connect all the way around our hands, and the center of our hands is going to almost pull up like a suction. Now, if you have any wrist issues at all, when you start to go on your wrist, you're going to feel it. It's going to hurt right in the front of your wrist. So if that's the case, you can roll up a towel or even your mat. And when you roll up your mat, you're going to bring your wrists off slightly, so it's kind of like on an angle like this instead of flat. So either way, you're able to do that. I don't have any wrist issues. It took me a long time to get some flexibility in my wrists, but I've gotten to a point where I can come back on my wrists and it's okay. So spreading the fingers nice and wide, planting them on the mat. So we're going to bring up our knees really high onto our shoulders, as high as we can. Now, we don't have to go right up into the armpits. For a lot of us, that's not accessible. But we want to bring it above our elbows, because as soon as we bend into those elbows, our legs need a place to rest. So that becomes like a shelf. So we want it to be above our elbows. If it becomes too close to our elbows, when we come up, we're going to slide off, and we're not going to be able to keep that connection. So keeping your knees nice and high above those elbows, connecting on all corners of your hands, making that suction, we're going to come up onto our toes. So we're up on our toes here, sit bones nice and high. We're going to bring our hands in a little bit closer. So here, one important thing is just to take a moment to move forward and move back. And just see how that weight shift feels in your wrists and your arms, and just feel how that balance, that connection into your balance. So it is very much about bringing it a little bit forward, a little bit back, and finding your balance. A very important thing to do is to look ahead at the mat in front of you. You don't want to look downwards, because if you look down, we're going to end up face planting forward. We want our chest nice and broad, and we want to look forward. So spreading the hands nice and wide, knees up as high as they can go, and we're going to lean forward. Now we can stay here, or we can begin to lift up one toe, place it down, come back. Lean forward, lift up the other toe, place it down, lean back. And you can just play with this until you feel like you have that strength in your arms to be able to go up with both toes. So, if you do feel like you have the strength, we're going to spread our fingers nice and wide, planting them down, knees come up nice and high, coming up on our tippy toes. We're going to lean forward, we're going to lift up one toe, and then when we're ready, we're going to lift up the other toe. Now here's really important, you don't want to release your legs down like this. You want to squeeze everything into the midline and then bring your toes into your sit bones. Gaze ahead, shoulders nice and broad. So you can see how that co-contraction of pushing our inner leg into our arm really pulls everything into the midline and creates this ability to come up high and be able to hold strong. As soon as we let things soften, we fall down. So let's try that one more time. Spreading the fingers nice and wide, placing them in front, knees up nice and high, above the elbows. We're going to come up onto our tippy toes, and then we're going to bring our hands in a little bit closer. Broad chest here, gaze in front. Leaning forward, we're going to begin to lift up this one toe, and then the other toe. Now we're squeezing those inner thighs together and bringing the toes to our sit bone. Staying up as long as you feel comfortable, gaze ahead. And then when you're ready, coming down. And that's crow pose for you. So yeah, it looks a little bit hard, and it is. It's a lot of strength. It does work into the flexibility. You need to find that space in the inside of your leg to be able to move down to create that shelf. But if you take each step, step by step, you'll be able to build that foundation to be able to move into that posture. Now, crow pose is one of those first arm balances that we learn. Once we learn crow pose, we can begin to apply the same sort of rules, creating those chaturanga arms nice and strong, pulling everything into the midline. And when we start to apply those same rules to other postures, we can see that all of those following arm balances become so much more easier, because we're able to find our balance, find that mind-body connection, find that stability and that strength, and we're able to just flow through those postures a lot more easily. So I hope you enjoyed this first tutorial. If there's any questions, feel free to post below. And I will be giving you a lot more of basic postures and breaking them down for you. But I just thought, you know, what the heck, we might as well start this off and have some fun. So have some fun with your crow. Make sure that your head is looking forward so you're not going to face plant. And if you're worried at any point, just put a pillow in front of your face. Make sure to take off your glasses. You don't want to wreck your glasses. And just make sure that, you know, you have the comforts there. And that takes away the fear. And then as you can move, you can begin to move away from putting anything in front. So hope everyone has a wonderful day, and I will see you in our next tutorial. Namaste.